Good morning and good evening, everyone. I should first note that we have simultaneous interpretation for this webinar. So please use the interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. This is a round globe on your screen. Пожалуйста, воспользуйтесь функцией синхронного перевода. Внизу Zoom-панели – это глобус. Выбирайте язык, на котором вы будете присутствовать на вебинаре. So my name is Catherine Balabanova, and I'm the regional director of the Toronto chapter of Canada Eurasia Chamber of Commerce and national coordinator for CCC. I should say that CCC Toronto would like to acknowledge that our chapter is located on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, Anishinabek, the Chippewa, and Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. And now it is the home of many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We will have 3 sessions today on the general policy on ESG framework in mining and on innovation and procurement. Please actively participate through using the Q&A window. It is monitored by our moderators, and your questions will be used during the discussion portions after each of the sessions. Q&A is your only interactive tool for today, so please use it actively. As mentioned, the simultaneous interpretation is provided, and this is the globe button at the bottom of your screen. The webinar will be recorded and posted on YouTube channel, so please make sure to subscribe. I would like to thank our sponsors, Cameco Corporation, Condor Petroleum, and the B2 Gold at the gold level, and Aras Minerals as the bronze level sponsor. Our last week's in-person meeting at PDAC in Toronto and the reception would not have been possible without your generous support. So thank you cordially. This meeting is also the continued work of Kazakhstan-Canada Business Council, and I'm inviting Norman Storm, the chairman of our CCC Kazakhstan chapter, to say a word of welcome and introduce the ambassadors. Besides our Kazakhstan office chairmanship, Norman Storm is also the general director of Falcon Oil and Gas and the managing director of Condor Petroleum. These companies have been active in Kazakhstan energy sector for more than 16 years, and Condor is the second largest investor in Kazakhstan, Canadian investor in Kazakhstan. Norman, please.
Thank you, Catherine. Good day, everyone. And I just would like to welcome everybody to the Natural Resource Working Group, which is the first working group of the 5th meeting of the Kazakhstan-Canada Business Council, also known as KCBC. For those of you who might not be familiar with KCBC, it was jointly established in 2050 by Serbia on the Canadian side and the Kazakhstan International Chamber of Commerce on the part of Kazakhstan. The council is currently co-chaired by the chief executives of Kazatomprom and Cameco Corporation, Messrs. Galamjan Permatov and Tim Gitzel, respectively. KCBC is widely recognized as one of the preeminent forums to promote bilateral cooperation, trade, and investment between Kazakh and Canadian organizations and companies. I would very much like to welcome all the dignitaries as well as our panelists to this working group, and of course, all of you in the audience who are taking part. We currently have more than 100 registered participants for this working group, and time permitting, our experts will be happy to answer any questions that you may have during our Q&A sessions. I'm very happy to introduce the moderators for today's 3 sessions of the Mining Working Group. And the first session will be moderated by Kanat Kudabergen, the CEO of Grey Wolf Management. And then following Kanat, Martha Harrison, partner at McCarthy Tetro, as well as the chair of the Toronto chapter of the CECC, and Christopher Shago, director of Schneider Group. I'll let Kanat, Martha, and Christopher introduce the speakers directly prior to them giving their presentations. However, for ease of reference, the digital bios and programs are posted on our CECC website. I would also like to mention that the co-chairs of the KCBC Mining Working Group are once again Kanat Kudabergan, the CEO of Grey Wolf Management, a private equity fund based in Kazakhstan that works with Canadian investors in the mining sector, and Darren Klink, CEO of Araz Minerals, a junior miner that is currently building an exciting portfolio of copper and gold porphyry assets in northeastern Kazakhstan. Our KCBC working group was previously made up of mining and energy sectors, but due to the large number of companies and projects in each of these sectors, we decided that it would make sense to split the mining and energy working groups into separate divisions or sectors. We're dealing with very interesting times once again, and this seems to be often the case when we have our working group meetings, but now obviously COVID-19 is slowly coming to an end, but we have the Russian invasion in Ukraine has had a major effect on all of the world's economies, and including Kazakhstan and Canada. However, as is often the case, times of crisis can also serve to bring people, companies, and governments closer together. And cooperation, communication, and solidarity must be intensified in times like this. And all stakeholders clearly understand this and the need to work even more closely together to ease the pain and provide a roadmap for a better future. Difficult economic times also often present opportunities to acquire projects that otherwise would not be available. And I think it is safe to say that the governments of both Kazakhstan and Canada are open for business and ready to welcome new investments in the natural resource sectors of their economies. The mining sector is critical to both the economies of both countries and vital contributors to the GNP of each industry. Thanks, everyone. I hope that today's event will be beneficial to all of you and lead to additional bilateral investments in each of our countries. The results of today's working group meetings will be presented in the plenary session of KCBC, which will be held in October of this year, and also published in a report that will be available publicly. I now have the pleasure to invite His Excellency Ambassador Kamaldinov, the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of the Republic of Kazakhstan to Canada, to say a few words. Ambassador Kamaldinov.
Good morning and good evening, dear friends. Dear ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure to welcome the participants of the Kazakhstan-Canada Mining Working Group. Today we start the series of events in the framework of 5th meeting of Kazakhstan-Canada Business Council. I would like to thank CECC team for organizing the working group meeting and mining series events during the month. Taking this opportunity, I would like to share with you a short overview for the current situation in Kazakhstan. As many of you know, Kazakhstan is at a new stage of its development. We are implementing large-scale democratic political reforms. A few weeks ago, people of Kazakhstan voted at the national referendum for constitutional amendments. To ensure democratization of political process, the amendments propose the transition from a super-presidential form of government to a presidential one with a strong parliament, the establishment of the constitutional court, prohibition of the death penalty, as well as an improved mechanism for protection of citizen rights. We believe that the ongoing political reforms should go hand in hand with comprehensive economic transformations. We are implementing a new economic course of the country aimed at building generally free and competitive market economy. In this regard, we also pay special attention to the systematic improvement of the investment climate. Support of foreign investors in mining industry remains as an important priority. The government will provide large incentives for the exploration and development of new deposits for mining and other companies. Since we improved the business climate in Kazakhstan mining sector and adopted a new mining code, we are witnessing an interest for Canadian mining companies to work in Kazakhstan. Some of them already started operation in our country. In general, I can assure you that it is a perfect time to do business in Kazakhstan. Currently, a new approach of doing business and new way of thinking is being formed right now in our country. The government will continue implementing measures to provide a more transparent environment in mining sector and to improve business climate for doing business in Kazakhstan. We are working on providing more favorable conditions to foreign investors. Development of trade, economic, and investment relations with Canada remains essential for our country. We are much looking forward to further develop business ties with Canadian companies, and the embassy is committed to ensure the safety of your business in Kazakhstan and supporting all of your initiatives in our country. Despite the impact of COVID-19 pandemic, Canadian business community demonstrates strong will to develop business with Kazakhstan. Our joint efforts led to a remarkable increase of our trade and investment relations. Canadian companies invested more than $485 million to the projects in Kazakhstan in 2021, which is the biggest amount in the last 9 years. In 2021, a trade turnover recovered to pre-pandemic level and exceeded 620 million Canadian dollars, which is also last 6-year high. We believe that our joint efforts aimed to continue our mutual beneficial business relations will benefit both our countries. I wish the participants of the working group a fruitful joint discussion and new opportunities in business. Please be assured that our embassy is at our disposal to discuss any issues of your interest. I wish all of you to stay safe. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador Kamaldinov, and I can honestly say that I share the excitement. I think all investors in Kazakhstan see what's going on and are very excited about the future of the country going forward with all of these reforms and improved transparency. So it was great seeing you at PDAC, and thank you very much for those very, very important words that you just provided to us. I would now also like to invite His Excellency Alan Hampson, the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Canada to the Republics of Kazakhstan, the Kyrgyz Republic, and the Republic of Tajikistan, to say a few words, please. Ambassador Hampson.
Thank you. Hörmətli hanımlar və mirzalar, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, mesdames et messieurs, it's a pleasure to join Ambassador Kamaldinov and Norman in welcoming you to this year's Canada-Kazakhstan Mining Conference. This conference is important for several reasons. As we all know, PDAC Convention is one of the world's premier mineral exploration and mining events, and it was wonderful for me to be there for my first time this year. It was particularly great to be there, to be able to directly witness Canada-Kazakhstan success stories in the mining sector, the joint venture agreement between Excalibur Multiphysics and Aurora Minerals, and the listing of Aras Minerals on the TSX. So congrats to everyone involved. Great to see these projects moving forward. I also believe that most of you will be active in the online portion next week. I'm sure that will also be a very rich and useful discussion at this exciting time in the mineral sector. Today's session clearly emphasizes Canada's strong interest in Kazakhstan and our commitment to develop mutually beneficial cooperation. On this note, I'd also like to acknowledge the important meetings that Cameco and Condor had with President Tokayev and other key government leaders in early June. And what a great success in our bilateral relationship. And in particular, congratulations to Ambassador Kamaldinov for arranging these important meetings. I know one of the topics discussed was cooperation within the framework of the Canada-Kazakhstan Business Council. And today's conference also launches the working group sessions for the 2022 KCBC meeting that will take place later in the year that I know I'm looking forward to and my team was working hard on. The 5 working groups in sectors like mining, agriculture, and energy have been meeting since 2020 and are an important element of our bilateral relationship. They bring together key decision makers in business, government, and regulatory bodies. For mining, Canada is the most logical partner for Kazakhstan. The mining industry is a major sector for Canada's economy. It contributes $107 billion to our national GDP and is responsible for 19% of our total exports. It also employs 692,000 people directly and indirectly across the country. For Kazakhstan, it is the 12th largest minerals producer in the world, and the mining sector in Kazakhstan represents about 12% of GDP and 20% of export revenue, employing 160,000 people. We already have highly developed mining cooperation. Canada is among the 10 largest investors in Kazakhstan, with much of the investment in the mining sector. In 2021, our exports to Kazakhstan totaled $88 million. Of this, mining equipment accounted for more than 30 million. There is room for growth. I'd like to point to a few areas of potential cooperation between our countries that will be discussed in more detail later today. There will be interesting information on Kazakhstan's mining sector investment climate and financing possibilities. These are areas where Canada has policy expertise and long experience. Further, Canada is a world leader in environmental, social, and governance practices in mining. There'll be useful presentations from Canadian firms in Kazakhstan that implement the highest ESG standards. Finally, for innovative technologies and services, Canada is a leader in all aspects of mining equipment, geological database management, and engineering and geophysical services. We're in a complicated and dynamic world, as Norman mentioned. Traditional trade and investment ties are being shaken up and in some cases broken. And we have to work together to get through this. We should also recognize that sometimes with change comes opportunity. And our conference today highlights these opportunities in our mining trade, and it's now up to our industries to seize these opportunities. I wish you the best of success in this important challenge and hope to continue the work in person or online soon. Thank you, merci, Rahmet.
Thank you, Ambassador Hampson. Well chosen words and exciting words linking our two countries in this sector. I guess now we'll turn it over to our moderator for session one, Kanat. Could you please take over from here?
Hello, dear ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to some, good evening to others. I'm pleased to welcome you to our session. So let me start our session. Nowadays, we are all facing challenges such as war, illnesses, and etc. Because of that, many areas of our lives changed, and the mining one of them. Today, we are going to discuss how it has affected specifically mining sector of both countries, as well as discuss investment opportunities and practice in Eurasia. So let's get acquainted with session speakers. Nurlan Temirbekov, Director of Geology Department of the Ministry of Ecology, Geology and Natural Resource of Kazakhstan. Irnur Smagambetov, Board Chair of Astana International Financial Center. And Ben Chambers, Senior Vice President of Mining Association of Canada. Dear speakers, we kindly ask you to limit your performance to not more than 10 minutes. Please note that our first speaker is Nurlan Temirbekov, Director of Geology, Department of Ministry Ecology and Geology and Natural Resource of Kazakhstan, with his presentation. Нурлан, пожалуйста, вам слово.
Доброе утро, добрый вечер, уважаемые участники рабочей группы, коллеги. Позвольте поприветствовать вас от имени Министерства экологии, геологии и природных ресурсов и поблагодарить за представленную возможность выступить на этой площадке с информацией по текущему состоянию и дальнейшему развитию геологической отрасли в нашей стране. Сразу хотел бы вам, наверное, перейти к рабочему диалогу. Хотел бы сообщить вам, рассказать чуть-чуть про нашу геологическую отрасль, про горнодобывающую промышленность. В Казахстане государственным балансом полезных ископаемых учитывается более 8
lists more than 8,000 deposits that are registered in it, of which 317 are oil and gas deposits, oil, gas, condensate, 910 are mineral resources, more than 3,000 are general mineral resources, and about more than 4,000 are underground water deposits. The main reserves of deposits of gold are concentrated in the East Kazakhstan region, and that makes about 36% of total reserves. In Akmala region, 21%. In Karaganda region of our country, 11%. 82% of reserves, of copper reserves, are concentrated in eastern and central regions of the country. 41% of lead zinc deposits are concentrated in central Kazakhstan, 33% in eastern Kazakhstan, and 21% in southern Kazakhstan. Due to the intensity of mining, it's necessary to ensure the timely replenishment of reserves, especially in the single industry towns, whose economies are made up of mining and metallurgical industries. Without adequate replenishment, the reserves of many of the deposits under development, with their high extraction rates, will be depleted in the short term. For this reason, government geological studies of mineral resources need to be intensified, which is one of the main stages to identify promising areas and sites for subsequent transfer to subsoil use. At the same time, in 2020-2022, the volume of state investments in carrying out state geological study of subsurface resources amounted to only 24.6 billion tenge. Global experience shows that investors are investing in exploration in those countries where the state has already carried out or is carrying out the early stages of work at their own expense, and where a database of promising areas with inferred resources has already been formed. Look at slide 2. Therefore, the geological industry is facing the following main tasks within the framework of executing the instructions of the head of state. First, increasing the geological exploration of the country's territory for subsequent transfer to subsurface users. Second, development of infrastructure of the geological industry and geological science. Work on these tasks is being carried out within the framework of implementation of measures of the national project Sustainable Economic Growth, aimed at improving the well-being of Kazakhstan people. Third, digitalization and automation of production and technological processes. Fourth, the improvement of legislation to increase the investment appeal of geological exploration and the reproduction of the mineral base. I should note that we have already drafted a concept for the development of the geological sector up to 2026, which addresses the above-mentioned issues. There is a considerable potential for development of the mineral raw material base of gold and copper industry in central, eastern, and southern areas of Kazakhstan. There are prospects for discovering new deposits of tungsten, molybdenum, aluminium, tin, rare metals, and other minerals. Slide 3. On the instructions of the head of state in October of last year, the national project Sustainable Economic Growth to improve the well-being of Kazakhstanis, which includes the direction development of the geological industry for 2021-2025, was adopted. Within the framework of this project, the total exploration area will be more than 680,000 square kilometers by 2026. In 2021, within the framework of the national project, work was carried out on state geological survey of subsurface resources at 79 sites. This year, the work is being performed at 103 sites at the expense of the state budget. Slide 4, prospecting work on 7 prospective sites located near a single industry town. These are Rieder, Chromtau, Zhezkazgan, Temirtau, and Balkhash. Carried out to ensure stable operation of city-forming enterprises. Given the current global market trends and increasing demand for rare and rare earth metals, including lithium, particular attention is being paid to identifying promising sites for these raw materials. In particular, this year, work continues on identification of rare metals at sites in the eastern Kazakhstan regions of our country. And the work is planned to start on identifying prospects for rare earth metals at 12 new sites. Slide 5. As part of the digitalization and together with the ministry,
we are now developing the single platform, which is called Kaznedra, as shown on the slide. When merging and migrating all the existing reforms of the systems for subsoil use, this single platform will facilitate providing comprehensive service support to the investors through consolidation of all the processes and services to a single window function. At the moment, the detailed roadmap to implement this project has been adopted and approved. Please, next slide. In line with item 8 of the National Action Plan to implement the address of the President to the people of Kazakhstan, we are now working to establish the National Geological Function based on the daughter companies that report to us. The key goals of the National Geological Function is to provide comprehensive service support to the investors through providing open access to geological information, operation of the National Data Bank of the mineral resources, systematizing and summarizing and analysis of geological information together with the research institutions of Kazakhstan in geology. Relevant governmental decree on establishment of the geological function was adopted in late 2021 by the government. The review of the international experience in the regulation of geological sector demonstrates that all the developed countries such as Australia, US, UK, and Korea have well-established and well-functioning national geological functions, having the goals as collection, analysis, and provision of geological information and systematic geological studies, including mapping of minerals. The function will become the function of comprehensive support and open access provision to the database and operation of the National Data Bank of Resources, summarizing and systematizing the information about the geology. Under this National Geological Function, we also plan to build core storage facilities, modernization of the existing ones. As a result, the level of supply of the information for the public institution will become 100%. Distinguished members of the working group, I would like to thank you again for this invitation to participate in your platform discussions. And I would like to comment that cooperation with the Canadian companies will give us the very rich experience in exploration, estimation, and assessment of deposits, business process planning, risk evaluation in line with the best international practices. I'm certain that our fruitful cooperation and mutual partnership between the countries in geology will provide the impetus to the development of the geologies of our countries. Let me thank you for your attention and look forward to our future fruitful cooperation. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Нурлан, за такой...
Thanks a lot, Nurlan, for your very informative presentation.
Our second speaker is Ernur Rasmagambetov, board chair of Astana International Financial Center.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, Your Excellencies, dear colleagues, dear partners. I hope you can hear me very well. So we represent Astana International Financial Center, and we would like to also contribute to this working group in terms of attracting more mining companies from Canada to Kazakhstan. So my previous colleague mentioned about the from the Ministry of Geology on the different opportunities, mining opportunities, and I believe different other experts will tell you more about geological opportunities in Kazakhstan. So where we come in as a financial center is that it is often that once even you identify some interesting geological license or some assets, you get into different challenges on how you actually come into the country, how you actually onboard your companies to the country. So that's what we do. We help the different companies to come to Kazakhstan, to enter the market, to onboard and to navigate around not just the country, but also the region as well. So we have prepared you a very small, short presentation. I would like to split it into two parts. First part, I'll tell you more about Astana International Financial Center, and my colleague Nurlan Toimbek, who is the managing director, who leads our investment department. He'll tell you more about investment preferences that the country provides in case you decide to enter the country. So next slide, please. So as an ambassador, I mentioned that the country has been trying to improve business climate and investment climates. Actually, today we approved the new investment policy in the country, closing down the 30 years of investment cycles. So the country right now is opening a new investment cycle, and there is some amendments to come. But as the Mr. Ambassador mentioned, that the country is keen to attract foreign direct investments, and will try to do even more than before to provide even more preferences. So what is AAFC? AAFC is a separate independent jurisdiction based on English common law, located on the territory on the left bank of the capital of Kazakhstan. So this is like based on the constitutional law. So we have our own laws. We have our own international court, international arbitration center. You can think of it as a Hong Kong and China, one country, two systems. So we are a very small Hong Kong on the territory of Kazakhstan, which operates a little bit different, which operates based on the English common law, as I mentioned before, and our official language is English. So originally, AAFC was established as a financial center. It was meant to attract more of the financial institutions, but later on, and under the supervision of the President of Kazakhstan, who chairs the Management Council, AAFC was expanded to become the regional investment hub. So we're not just a financial center now, so we're like more like a center for raising finance. And we onboard not just financial services companies, but we also onboard any international businesses that wants to do business in Kazakhstan. On the slide, you can see our structure. I'm not gonna go over the details about it, but one interesting thing you may notice on the right side is the Astana International Exchange. It's a newly built exchange from scratch that we did past 5 years, and we work with NASDAQ and Goldman Sachs, and there's different opportunities to raise financing, including equity listing, debt listing. So the national operator, Kazatomprom, conducted its IPO on our platform, AX, and some of the regional miners also use our platform to raise financing to finance their mining operations. So it has a full range of capital markets products that is, we notice that could be very interesting for Canadian companies, especially the ones which are already listed in other exchanges, such as Toronto, New York, or Australia, or any other places. So for them, it will be very convenient to use our platform to raise the financing to come into the market. We have also other organizations, Expat Center. We have a separate visa regime, which makes your life easier when you come in here, and other entities such as Business Connect, Tech Hub, Green Finance Center, and BCPD, which provides you with the local professionals. So we have tried to build our ecosystem so that any company, any international company that comes to Kazakhstan can get the benefits, can get the products and services that they require upon making the decisions to come to the market. Next slide, please. So 2016 and 2017, we did a lot of legal work. We had to also make amendment to the constitution. So where AAC is based on the separate constitutional law, which governs our activities. We have our own acts called AAC Acts. So this year we are celebrating 4 years in operation. And over the past 4 years, more than 1,400 companies found our platform to be useful from 64 different countries. And we see more and more now companies from North America, including Canada and the United States. And we see more and more companies in that are interested in the mining industry as well. As a fact, we have 4 different sectors of the economy that we target as a priority: energy sector, mining sector, agriculture, and trade and logistics. So for us, mining is not just any other sector. For us, it's the highest priority as a financial center. Next slide. Besides coming and registering, we also help the companies to attract investments. So over the past 4 years, we help the companies that join AAC to attract more than $6.7 billion US using various instruments. Some companies come and raise equity capital. Some use our platform to raise debt. Some of them use different banking institutions that are also on board onto our platform. But we try to provide not just the registration and the jurisdiction and business environment, but also we try to provide co-investment and the financing opportunities. Next slide. Here I would like to invite my colleague Nurman Toimbek, who's leading our investment department. So as Ambassador mentioned, over the past few years, country has been undertaking a lot of reforms and transformation. And as one of the transformation, the country has created investment task force. It's a joint group together with the Kazakh Invest and AAC team members who actually help the international investors like yourself to actually sign the contracts with the government, obtain special preferences, and actually help you to onboard into the country. And he'll tell you more about what the country can offer to the mining investors. Nurman, please, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Yermur. Good morning and good evening, Your Excellencies, dear participants. And let me start with separate words of thanking from Mr. Norman Storm for accepting our invitation to be a speaker on our upcoming event, which is Astana Finance Days, where we will discuss the investment opportunities in energy and food sustainability as a Kazakhstan's case. So, and of course, I would like to invite all of you to participate. We have a hybrid format, so you can participate online and offline as well. And with regard to the supporting investments, being a developing country, Kazakhstan, of course, heavily supporting foreign direct investments into our economy. We have many different instruments and programs with regard to supporting investors here. And one of them is just recently introduced last year, which is called Strategic Investment Agreement. All projects with the cost of more than $50 million US can apply for this strategic investment agreement, which provides 25 years of legislation stability. And of course, there is some tax preferences on corporate income tax, individual tax, customs preferences, and visa and migration preferences as well. And within the agreement, the investor also can apply for grant as a free of charge lend plot for his business, and for reimbursement of some costs up to 20% of construction and installation works. Next slide, please. And of course, we have minor contracts which are called investment contracts. These contracts are applicable for investors with the ticket size starting from 15 million to 49 million US dollars. They also can apply for land plot, legislation stability for 10 years, and tax exemption for 10 years as well. Mining and metallurgical complex in Kazakhstan are very diversified, as our colleague from the ministry told before, and you can see that in different parts of Kazakhstan there is different ores and whatever you choose. Next slide, please. Yes, and of course we have already made about 40 proposals in investment proposals in mining sector, and AIFC in these terms, maybe some of you can think why International Financial Center, how is it included into mining industry and so on. But from the very beginning, yes, the AIFC was structured as with the goal to attract more financial industry players to our economy, to develop capital markets and so on. But with the time, we have noticed that the legal framework which are based on English common law practices are very comfortable for all businesses, not only financial industry. And today we have about 48 general acts of AIFC, which are very which attracts foreign investors. This acts concerns the let's say is operating issues for the companies. Is the company regulation law, is the contract law, is the employment law, is very different from national legislation and more familiar for foreign investors here in Kazakhstan. And of course, the language which we use, our official language, business language, is English here in AIFC. So it's easier for foreign investors to integrate into local business society, with the local business society. And today AIFC is strongly incorporated into national investment architecture. We became a co-authors of all main national legislation framework, as well as our own AIFC legal framework. And we became a member of the investment headquarters, which is headed by the Prime Minister, where the ministers, cabinet of ministers, let's say in manual format, driving big projects and helping them to succeed in Kazakhstan. And we also have created a joint task force with the leading investment promotion agency of Kazakhstan, which is Kazakh Invest. We created a joint task force where our respective officers of our respective departments work together to strengthen and to create more favorable conditions for investors here in Kazakhstan and in AIFC in general. We, of course, we cooperate with our embassies abroad. We cooperate with our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and whenever you need our assistance, you always can reach out to us through the embassy or directly. Next slide, please. AIFC investment ecosystem includes these agreements on investments, which I mentioned before. We also have about 16 special economic zones and about 26 industrial zones, where special tax and regulatory regime is implemented. In AIFC, we also have independent from national jurisdiction dispute resolution system, which consists of our international court and arbitration center. These two institutions are aimed to support and to ensure foreign investors in their security of their investments here in Kazakhstan. Court and arbitration center are based on English common law and the precedents of England and Wales, the 9 judges of which are appointed by the president, and all of them today are judges from England. They reside in England because we have implemented together with our Singapore partners, implemented e-justice system, and about 98% of all cases today are done online, and all of them are 100% implemented. So my CEO also already mentioned the Astana International Exchange. And next slide, please. Next slide, please. In the beginning of work with the mining sector, Kazakhstan's legislation was quite poor, and it was very old, and we needed a mining law based on international principle. That's why in 2018, next slide, please. In 2018, new subsoil use code came into effect, which is based on Australian model, of Western Australian model, and it was produced in conversation with the industry players. So we believe this new code will be more comfortable and more useful for industry players as well as for the government. And up to date, 1.7 thousand licenses already issued. Next slide, please.
Sorry for interrupting, Nurlan. Can you be shortened because it's very tough timeline?
Okay, sure. So in few words, let's say AIFC could become your gateway to not only to Kazakhstan but to Central Asian region in general. We always welcome our foreign participants. Today we have more than 1,400 participants, and about 30% of them are foreign companies, and they choose AIFC. They choose AIFC to structure their business in Kazakhstan and in the region. So if whenever you have any questions, please contact us. Please, can you show us the last slide with the contact details? Yeah. You can contact us via email, and we will be happy to answer to all your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nurlan.
Thank you, Irnur. Thank you, Nurlan. Jointly, very interesting presentation. So next speaker in our session is Ben Chalmers, Senior Vice President of Mining Association of Canada. Please welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. I hope you can see the presentation on the screen. Yes, okay. It's a pleasure to join you today to share a little bit of insights about the state of mining in Canada. As was introduced, I'm Ben Chalmers, the Senior Vice President of the Mining Association of Canada. We represent the major mining producers in the country, and we work very closely with our colleagues at the PDAC who represent the exploration sector. So collectively, the two of us represent the explorers and the producers, and you'll hear from another colleague, Ryan McEachern, later, who represents the suppliers, the mining suppliers. So collectively, this is the group of organizations that represent mining in Canada. We also represent a number of mining suppliers, environmental consultants, accountants, legal, engineering, and others. Ambassador Hampson shared a few of the statistics that I would normally share, so I'll keep this slide a little short. I wanted to point out two things in addition to what he shared earlier. One is, in addition to the job numbers that he shared, one of the things that our industry is immensely proud of is our work with Indigenous people and the way in which we're employing Indigenous people in Canadian mining. We have over 16,000 Indigenous workers in our industry. We are the largest private sector employer of Indigenous people, and see ourselves as a key driver of Indigenous reconciliation, especially around the economic reconciliation. The other thing to point out is our role in helping to build Canadian infrastructure to allow the rest of the country to function efficiently. As you can see on the slide, we are over 50% of the rail freight volume that travels across our country and 40% of maritime shipping, which means that we add the economies of scale necessary to help the rest of goods and the goods flow across our vast country cost effectively. Now, when we look ahead at what's driving investment in mining, there are a number of trends that we're seeing. Lately, the global recovery from COVID is playing a key influencer. We're still dealing with supply chain challenges, the uneven recoveries that we're seeing around the world, and of course, global inflationary pressure is adding to some of the uncertainty around this. And we've been talking about the next big upcycle in mining, and yet in the last couple of months, we've seen sell-offs in commodities, even though we know that we can't produce nearly enough material for the green transition, the decarbonization that is driving so much demand right now. We anticipate that we need over 3 billion tons of metals and minerals over the next couple of decades to meet our Paris targets globally. And we don't know yet where all that's coming from. So there's a huge demand coming at the same time. We are grappling with supply chain challenges, as every other sector is. And of course, the geopolitical uncertainty, especially around the invasion of Ukraine, is really disrupting any sense of stability in our commodity industries. And we're still trying to figure out what all that means for us. In Canada specifically, we are seeing a number of policy drivers really affect our industry significantly. Our government's commitment to climate change and Indigenous reconciliation and clean technology are all key drivers that are putting a lens on mining, a focus on building a critical mineral sector that we haven't seen before. And all of these three factors work together to help support our industry. The recognition that carbon neutrality can't be reached without more critical minerals, that we don't have enough supply coming on stream, and we need to increase that supply, combined with the way in which mining is a key driver of reconciliation with Indigenous people in Canada, and the use of mining as an economic driver for developing our northern regions is becoming increasingly important. All of this comes together for us in Canada to realize the largest support for mining that we've ever seen in the federal government's budget this past spring. An investment of $4.8 billion, which is unprecedented in Canadian terms, and something that we're incredibly grateful for. Headlining that is a doubling of the mineral exploration tax credit, otherwise known as flow-through, for critical minerals, that will in all likelihood see Canada regain or reassert its spot at the top of a top destination in the world for exploration investment. We're seeing other major investments, as you can see on the screen, investments in new projects, new processing and extraction, research and development, just a long list of initiatives and measures to help our industry build more supply to help supply the global demand for critical minerals. However, that's that also is a little complicated by the challenges that we have in our permitting process and ensuring that mines can be built in a reasonable amount of time. As our Minister of Natural Resources said during the PDAC conference, we can't take 10 to 15 years to build a mine. if we want to achieve our climate change targets. We have to find a way of maintaining rigorous environmental standards while still advancing the timelines that we can build these projects in, because otherwise we're not going to have enough supply. One of the things that I wanted to talk about fairly quickly here is our own work in helping to create the conditions for more efficient advancement of projects, and that is our Towards Sustainable Mining standard. This is a sustainability standard for mining that we created in 2004. It was the first of its kind environmental and social standard focusing on mine site level performance. Today, it's now in place in 10 different countries around the world on 6 different continents, as you can see on the flags on the bottom right of the screen. And we are committed to sharing this freely with mining industries anywhere in the world that wants to join us on this journey to more responsible mineral production. It's a standard that, as I said, focuses on mine site level transparency, overseen by a multi-stakeholder committee called our Community of Interest Advisory Panel, and independently and externally verified. This is a snapshot of the kinds of people we engage with on our advisory panel to help oversee the standard. So it's not just the mining industry, it's really a national dialogue, and each country that implements TSM is obligated to create a panel of multi-stakeholder interests similar to this. We cover what we see as all of the critical aspects of mining in terms of environmental and social areas. We're in the process of actually developing a new standard focusing on equity, diversity, and inclusion and respectful workplaces, which will round out the key risks that take place at the mine site level. And you can see some of the areas that we cover on the screen here. When we present the data, we present it as a key driver of improvement. And so this is a snapshot of one company's 2 mines in Canada. Rio Tinto has 2 major operations. Actually, they have 3 and one didn't fit on the slide. But the Diavik diamond mine is a diamond mine up in northern Canada, and iron ore is a complex of iron ore production in Quebec. And you can see that this is 4 of our indicators in the water stewardship part of our standard. And you can see the differences in performance. So it's one of the indications of why a mine site level standard is important in helping to improve the performance of our sector. This is collective data for our industry over time, and this, I think, it can show you why we are very proud of this work in helping to improve sustainability in mining in Canada, and why we think it's a tool that can help elsewhere. This is our 4 indicators related to Indigenous and community outreach. Over time, 2006 was our first year of verification. And so that's our baseline year. And you can see when we started this, only about 50% of our mines could meet or exceed the good practice level, with good practice being the green at the bottom, sort of leadership being the blue and the brown over top. And today that level of performance has risen from about 50%, just over 50%, to the high 90s. And we've just introduced a new version to continue that improvement. So it's sort of a way of quantifying the improvement that we've seen in the sector over the years, helped by our standard. We're also, I think, quite proud of our climate change activities. And one of the things that we see here is our climate intensity for nickel compared to other regions. Canada is one of the cleanest places to produce nickel in the world, next only to Finland, and that is due in part to our clean electricity grid. But this also takes into account many of our mines that operate on diesel power, and so, I think with the help of good, effective energy and climate change standards included in TSM and other drivers in Canada, we've been able to drive our greenhouse gas intensity down to a very low level for nickel. And then again, for copper, as 2 examples, we have others to share as well. You can see Canada on the far left of the screen there. So that's, I think, a goal that we should all be reaching to be able to improve our carbon intensity of our metal production. The last thing that I wanted to share in relation to this is that we position ourselves as a leader in simplifying the environment around sustainability standards. one of the things that we've accomplished with our TSM standard is equivalency with 5 other standards, as you can see on the screen. So with our system, a mine could potentially get credit for 5 other standards with one single reporting and assurance process. And that is a major accomplishment to help reduce the burden on mining companies. And that is something also that we're sharing with our partners around the world. So I guess I would leave you with the suggestion that if there is a desire from the Kazakhstan industry here to work with us, we would be most welcoming of it. And the last slide here is my contact information. If anyone wants to reach out to me, this is how you can get a hold of me. So thank you very much for the opportunity to share with you today, and I'll look forward to answering any questions online or perhaps offline if anyone wants to reach out.
Thank you, Ben, for your excellent presentation. And for whole participants, thank you for speakers. Thank you, colleagues, for your shared opinions and the views regarding our session's topic. So, dear participants, if you have some questions, you can use question and answers function in Zoom. So, on that note, our session has come to an end, and we hope enjoy it. See you soon. I want give to the brief for our main moderator. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Kanat. And seeing no questions, a couple of questions came in regarding the presentations, which are of high interest to all participants. We will share the authorized by speakers presentations PDF formats after the event to all of the attendees in an email, and you will receive it along with the edited video of the webinar today. Okay, so now moving over to the next session. It's moderated by the chair of the Toronto chapter of Canada Eurasia Chamber of Commerce, Martha Harrison. Martha is the partner of McCarthy Tetro, a large law firm located well, in Canada and in Toronto. So Martha, please take over.
Thank you, Catherine. Hello, everyone. Lovely to be here. As Catherine mentioned, I'm a partner in the International Trade and Investment Group at McCarthy Tetro. And my team at the firm has done a significant amount of work in supply chain management, international trade consultations in ESG in a number of sectors, including and especially in the mining sector. So I'm particularly delighted to be moderating this fantastic panel today. As Catherine mentioned, I'm also the chair of the Toronto chapter of the CECC, and I've been an active member of the organization for a number of years. I am delighted to introduce our phenomenal panel today. I'd like to introduce each panelist briefly, but I will invite you to review their fulsome bio in the agenda. As you'll see, they have very impressive bibliographical information and real subject experts in these areas. First, we have Akboda Askanbey, who is the director in PwC's ESG and corporate governance practices in the Eurasian region. Akboda has over 13 years of experience in project management in the areas of corporate governance, sustainability, management reporting, and financial auditing statements at various levels and offices at PwC in Eurasia and in the UK. Next, we have Rochelle Girard, who is the Vice President, Investor Relations, Treasury and Tax at Cameco Corporation, which is one of the world's largest uranium producers, whose head office is in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, in Canada. Rochelle has been with Cameco since 2006 and has taken on a number of key executive roles within the organization. Darren Klink serves as President and Director of the Aris Minerals, which is a Canadian junior mining and exploration company. He was most recently president of Bluestone Resources, a Canadian public company focused on the development of a gold project in Guatemala, and he has held a number of executive positions in Australia and in Canada. Lastly, we have Manas Iskakov, who's the Managing Director for Industrial Safety at Kazatomprom, where he has held a number of executive roles. He is the recipient of a host of awards of excellence in the nuclear industry sector, and he's recognized as a subject matter expert, particularly in IAEA radiation safety and minimization of the impact of the uranium industry on workers and the environment. Again, wonderful to have you all today. I would invite our first speaker to share the presentation. And if possible, I remind the speakers to try and keep your presentations to about 10 minutes in the event that we have some questions. So I introduce again Akboda Askambe. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Martha. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to meet you and be part of this conference. I'd like to start with the presentation, and it was really good to hear Ben's presentation from the Canadian practice. I'll probably give a bit of snapshot on what's on the agenda of major miners in Kazakhstan and what are they working on at the moment in the field of reporting. So basically, our mining companies are looking at the international framework. So this is the list of the standards that they are considering to implement, either implementing or have already reporting. The most popular one, obviously, is GRI, General Reporting Initiative. Major mining companies are already preparing their sustainability reports under this standard. Quite large ones are already considering TCFD, which I will touch upon a bit later. And there are also plans of implementation of ICMM, responsible sourcing principles as well. And here I would like to speak about the perspective towards TCFD, which stands for the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures. So major motivator for the sooner implementation of this standard is the latest announcement by the Financial Conduct Authority of the UK, making the standard obligatory for all standard listed companies. It's already known that this is the listing which is targeted by Central Asian companies at the international stock exchanges. And there is higher focus on the standard. The TCFD itself, it focuses on the identification of the climate risks, their quantification, and the way organizations manage and oversee them. Here we provided a bit of a benchmark against the international leaders by 11 topics that have been recommended by TCFD for disclosure. Speaking of the risks themselves, there are two types of risks, traditional and physical risks. And obviously, the simplest example for the physical risk would be a drought or a heat, whereas traditional risks are more technological, customer preference, or regulation-based. And the financial implications that the companies are required to disclose within their annual reports are such as change in supply disruptions in supply changes, potential physical damage of assets, potential impairment of assets, or changes in resource and input prices. The reason I touch upon in this level of detail on TCFD is the reason it's because it serves as a base for the further major changes in the standard setting environment. Because let's say 5 years ago, there were a couple of internationally spread sustainability reporting standards that were mainly providing an opportunity for companies to select topics, whereas since the last couple of years, the major reporting regulators has already joined sustainability capitalism, or regulating sustainability information because of the high focus of the investors. So these are the major ones that you see on this slide. I will touch upon the major ones that are at certain extent affecting Kazakhstani companies or might affect in the future. So the big one is obviously the standards. In November 2021, at COP26, it was announced by IFRS Foundation about creating International Sustainability Standard Board. The board has already issued 2 exposure drafts in March on sustainability reporting, with a plan to finalize them by the end of 2022, which makes the spread of the obligatory implementation of these standards for majority companies who report under IFRS. So the 2 drafts they have issued relate to general sustainability related disclosures, that's one, and the S2 is climate related disclosures, very similar to the TCFD that we have discussed earlier, with a certain level of variance, of course, but this is how serious the climate agenda is becoming and applicable for the higher group of organizations globally, including Kazakhstan. Another set of standards that is affecting probably very big miners in Kazakhstan is Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive that has been issued by European Commission and at the moment is under consideration, but under the framework there is also a set of mandatory sustainability reporting standards plus a requirement for mandatory assurance. SSC has similar initiatives, also a big draft on climate, cybersecurity, and a number of couple of other topics. But for our region, SSC requirements are really affecting very few companies in terms of the reporting. Another big move that will impact companies maybe in a longer period is a TNFD. This is biodiversity focused set of standards similar to TCFD. We do expect it also to have a high impact in the next couple of years. Another set of the standards, or let's say framework, mining companies are looking at from our region is International Council on Metals and Mining, ICMM. So ICMM has obviously its own principles on sustainable mining. Major mining companies are looking towards implementation of those standards, considering them at the moment. I must say implementation of the standards is one of the qualifying criteria for the ICMM members. I know that ICMM is quite widespread also in Canada for among its major mining companies who already cover the next four steps I'm going to list. So basically ICMM members, along with the announcement of their commitment towards the principles, they also obviously have to implement them, ensure that there are relevant internal system processes and metrics that comply with the principles. Apart from that, they prepare annual disclosures within their annual reports on compliance with the principles. And the last step, obviously, they get assurance from independent practitioner on compliance with those principles. So I guess these are the major points with regards to the principles, and we do observe our PwC's clients in Canada also implementing these requirements. I will not touch upon in very detail on the principles themselves. They're very similar to the ones covered by Ben earlier. Obviously, the major ones are on ethical business. Then risk management is not only focused on the company's own risks, but also on the stakeholder perspectives. Obviously, environmental protection, responsible production, and health and safety, and other social measures. The next area that Kazakhstani miners are looking at is obtaining international ESG ratings. These are just a snapshot of the very popular ones at the market. And the topics, our companies are looking at the methodologies of the ESG rating agencies to ensure that they do comply and are able to obtain higher scoring. I think the more active work towards preparation to obtain ESG ratings has started middle 2021 with the aim to obtain ratings. end of this year, some companies already have ratings. So this is good to hear. Another area which is quite hot in our market is obviously greenhouse gas emissions. This slide is a snapshot of international benchmarking. We have highlighted as one group Kazakhstani companies to say that basically since 2021, major companies are working towards setting their net zero goals, especially after the announcement of Kazakhstan becoming carbon neutral by 2060. Scope 1 and Scope 2 have been quantified by the major mining companies, and there are certain initiatives going on to quantify Scope 3. And this is, I must say, this is challenging route that everyone is working on and on the agenda of the executives and the boards of the large mining companies in Kazakhstan. I'll move to the next section of the presentation. We'll touch upon on that briefly. This is the standards and the frameworks that I have listed require a big number of data, and it's challenging to collect all data and to comply with all of those frameworks. For that, companies have to build certain processes and systems to collect accurate and reliable data. Normally, ESG, or let it be financial reporting, requires a certain logical steps. It starts with identifying a strategy, integrating your processes, implementing those KPIs or reporting requirements, and then at the end, developing the external reporting and publishing to the external users. However, with the ESG being becoming such a big topic over the last couple of years and affecting companies globally, everyone is doing catching up work and trying to tackle the strategy and the reporting perspectives in parallel. There are a big number of vendors offering different ESG reporting solutions. What we do observe at the moment that most of the companies do prepare their data on a manual basis. They do consolidate manually and collect data from their subsidiaries also manually. Implementation of the sophisticated systems with the built-in internal controls is a journey. It's not a one-year exercise, and therefore some companies are trying to implement or started implementing simpler tools, more lighter ones, to upload the data at the subsidiary level and then consolidating it at the group level. Obviously, that helps. Another area for consideration is obviously management reporting, since ESG performance is not now only necessary for external demonstration, but also the companies need to show a progress within their annual reports. Therefore, the management and the boards of companies require regular ESG reporting. For that, companies also thinking about creating their dashboards and developing ESG KPIs. Certain KPIs such as LTIFR, fatalities, and others have been within the KPIs of Kazakhstani companies for the last 5 years as the corporate KPI. However, since the ESG movement globally, the number of KPIs are also extending. And I think the key here obviously is to ensure the data is reliable and accurate. For that reason, companies, I think this is a bit an early stage, but in our conversations with the clients, we also bring their attention to developing strong control environments similar to the one they have in their financial reporting purposes. This is to ensure trust from the external users of the ESG information. This is it from my end. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Akila. It was a fantastic presentation, and I'm happy to pass the baton to our second speaker, Rochelle Gerard. Over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Martha. I'll just do a quick sound check. Are you able to hear me okay?
Indeed.
Perfect. I'll just share my screen here then and get started. Are you able to see the screen, the slides?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Yes, yes, we can.
Thank you and good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, good evening, I guess, for different audiences. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to present today at this conference, the Kazakhstan-Canada Mining Conference. Before I get started, and because I'm in investor relations, I always have to start with a forward-looking caution that remind folks that I could include some forward-looking information. And this slide contains all of the factors and risks that could cause different results. And in addition, you can see our most recent MD&A and AIF for those factors and risks. So moving on from that, I just wanted to start with, Cameco's been in business, a business investor in Kazakhstan for almost 30 years. It's been a really important part of our strategy, and we've developed strong relationships and connections within Kazakhstan. As I think was mentioned earlier, our President and CEO Tim Gitzel co-chairs the Kazakhstan-Canada Business Council and is honorary consul of Kazakhstan in Saskatchewan. Cameco's proud of the partnership we've developed with Kazatomprom in joint venture Inkai, which has successfully developed into the world-class uranium production center that it is today. We were asked to speak today about the evolving trends in ESG, and for those who are less familiar, and Akboda covered a bit of this, the abbreviation does stand for environmental, social, and governance. And I would just say this discussion today is quite timely. I just participated in an investor relations conference where I think about a third of the presentations were focused on ESG. It's something that we at Cameco always focused on long before the rise of ESG investing. In fact, ESG principles have really been and continue to be foundational for all our business activities, including our investment in joint venture Inkai in Kazakhstan. But before I get to how Cameco's vision of energizing a clean air world and our values of safety and environment, people, integrity, and excellence reflect the ongoing commitment we have made to integrating ESG principles into all aspects of our business, I just wanted to spend some time talking about what ESG is and what we believe is driving the accelerating interest in it. And I'll try not to cover too much of the territory that's already been covered by Akboda. So what is ESG? Well, it really is, and if you can see on the screen, it really is a broad set of strategic business issues relating to corporate behavior that have the potential to materially impact a company's financial performance and long-term value. These issues generally fall outside the traditional financial performance indicators, and they include things like board composition, executive compensation, risk management, climate-related risks and opportunities, water use, biodiversity, health and safety, and diversity and inclusion, among many others. And there's increasing recognition that companies who integrate the management of these ESG factors into their strategy reduce risk and perform better than their peers and generate long-term value. As a result, you can see from this slide that there's been a massive rotation of capital towards companies that are better prepared to address ESG issues, with the current focus being really on climate-related risks and opportunities, and I would say a growing focus on diversity and inclusion. So I just want to start with the drivers of the acceleration of interest in ESG that we've seen over the last few years. We believe that the accelerated interest really reflects an increased awareness about the opportunity to enhance returns and the concern about systemic risks that have been highlighted by things like climate change and environmental concerns driven by the devastating physical and economic toll of things like wildfires, droughts, flooding, and hurricanes, by the COVID-19 pandemic and the disproportionate impact we've seen on service industries, on lower income individuals, families, and communities, by some high profile examples where business decisions have not just impacted a company's financial results, but in some cases have resulted in the significant loss of life. And we can think of things like tailings dams failures. By the recognition that inclusion and diversity within an organization leads to better decision-making and more successful outcomes. And more recently, I would say by the impact of geopolitics on globalization, which has really been catalyzed by the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Allocators of capital are demanding consistent, high quality and public information about the ESG risks and opportunities that have the potential to materially impact long-term value creation. And they want to see evidence that companies have an active plan to manage these issues that is embedded in their strategy. So these are all themes I think that we've heard from a few other presenters this morning. As Akboda sort of covered, there are a number of organizations that provide ESG ratings based on publicly available information. They provide these ratings to assist investors and other stakeholders assess a company's ESG related practices. However, because each rating agency has its own methodology, there are inconsistencies and a lack, I would say, of comparability among the data. In response to these concerns, and again, this was covered in the previous presentation, we've seen a number of standard setters come out and set frameworks and protocols for what to report. The goal really being to create more consistent, comparable, and reliable information that enables investors to more accurately assess the potential impacts of the risks on a company's business. So we've seen things like, and these again were covered in the previous one, the Carbon Disclosure Project, Global Reporting Initiative, Sustainability Accounting Standards Board, Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, among many others. But what we are starting to see, and again, this was covered, we're starting to see an increasing focus from various regulatory bodies on trying to consolidate all of these different frameworks and standards and ratings into reporting requirements for companies, and many of which are currently focused initially on climate change. So with the growing importance of ESG established, I just want to take a look at Cameco's commitment to integrating ESG principles into all aspects of our business and continuing to advance our already strong performance. Since our formation in 1988, Cameco has recognized the importance of ensuring a strong governance framework, of being good stewards of the environment, and of building strong relationships and engaging and protecting our employees, communities located near our operations, and other stakeholders. These are all tenets of ESG. At Cameco, we strive to make a difference in all that we do, whether it's globally by contributing to the clean energy transition, locally in the communities in which we operate, or daily in our interactions with each other. One of the most significant ways we are making a difference today is by continually working towards our vision of energizing a clean air world and adhering to our values. As countries and companies move away from fossil fueled electricity generation, and with about 90% of the world's economy covered by net zero commitments, there's growing recognition of the role for nuclear power in achieving clean energy transition. At Cameco, we support climate action that is consistent with the ambition of the Paris Agreement and the Canadian government's commitment to limit global temperature rise to less than 2 degrees Celsius. Our vision of energizing a clean air world recognizes that we have an important role to play in enabling the vast reductions in greenhouse gas emissions required to achieve a resilient net zero carbon economy. We have enhanced our climate reporting in alignment with the Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, and we have a climate transition working group that is developing a low carbon transition plan that we expect to have more details on next year. In addition to our focus on the environment, right from incorporation, we viewed our relationships with our workforce, Indigenous peoples, and local communities as fundamental to our success. The protection of our workforce and the public guides our risk assessment and the planning of our operations and product transport activities. I'm going to use the COVID pandemic as a bit of an example. During the COVID pandemic, we said people first and safety first. We took a number of proactive steps to ensure a continued safe working environment for our workers and to help slow down the spread of the virus. The steps we took included the suspension of production at several of our operations for a period of time. Where possible, we had people work remotely, and we implemented additional safety measures and protocols for our on-site workers. And even while our production was suspended, we kept and continued to pay all of our employees. We also established $1.25 million in COVID relief funds to support communities near our operations, both in Saskatchewan and in Ontario. And despite the challenges posed by COVID-19 and an extreme wildfire season in Saskatchewan in 2021, we recorded our best safety performance in the history of the company. The COVID pandemic has also led to increased focus on human capital management. We invest in programs to attract and retain a diverse and skilled workforce dedicated to continuous improvement and that is committed to our values. In Northern Saskatchewan, we use a 5-pillar approach to guide and define our activities. And that approach includes a focus on workforce development, business development, community investment, environmental stewardship, and community engagement. For example, in 2021, we developed and made available 15 online courses for residents of Saskatchewan's North to build capacity and enhance employability in the region. The courses are really designed to enhance digital readiness, industry readiness, and chemical readiness. In addition, we've been focusing on culture and fostering a more inclusive and diverse workplace. In 2021, more than 90% of our employees participated virtually in culture workshops. We also established an inclusion and diversity committee and provided respectful workplace training and unconscious bias training to employees. We believe members of a diverse workplace bring new ideas, perspectives, and experiences and expertise to our company. Just want to cover some of the highlights in respect of our efforts in this regard. We currently have a board where 33% are women, and we have 11% Indigenous representation on the board. In 2021, 48% of our Northern Saskatchewan employees were Indigenous, and 82% of all our services spent at Northern Saskatchewan mine sites was with local businesses. So I've shared some examples of our ESG activities at our Northern Saskatchewan mines where we are the operator. I also just want to take a minute to talk about joint venture Inkai, where we are the minority partner with a 40% share. The joint venture is responsible for directly implementing various programs, including those that directly relate to ESG. We support its efforts to establish ESG principles at its operation that align with those that we adhere to. And of course, we share practices where it's appropriate. Joint venture Inkai recently published its first sustainability report, which I would encourage people to look at, and I believe it can be obtained on their website. Like Cameco, Inkai has a focus on workplace safety, local employment, environmental stewardship, and community investment. Our ESG commitments have always been at the heart of what we do long before the rise of ESG, because we recognize it's the right thing to do and it adds significant business value for us. Our board of directors, our employees, contractors, communities, suppliers, customers, governments, and shareholders expect us to manage our company in a long-term sustainable fashion. So there's many more great examples of Cameco's commitment to ESG, and I encourage you to read our ESG report, which is on our website for more information. And I would just note that the 2021 report will be published shortly. We're very proud of our more than 30-year commitment to protect the development of our people, their communities, and to protect the environment. So I'll thank you for your interest today, and I'll stop there and turn it back to Martha.
Thank you so much, Rochelle. Fascinating. Really looking forward to hearing the next presentation. Darren Klink, please feel free to start the presentation.
Very good. I'm just going to share my screen here so you can see this here.
We can
Very
see.
good. Well, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Martha. And great to be here. It's a pleasure to be a part of this today. We appreciate the opportunity here at RS Minerals. So I was asked to join this panel, and speaking with Vera, what we thought might make the most sense as well, since we're a relatively new entrant into Kazakhstan, to give a bit of an overview on RS Minerals, talk about where our focus is, and particularly on copper and the importance on that as we look at ESG, and particularly the electrification of the world. Ben had some good statistics on that earlier. And then talk about us as an explorer in Kazakhstan and how we approach ESG really as part of our day-to-day, and really being at perhaps what might be described as at the pointy end, really focusing on making discoveries. The overall sort of challenges and considerations do overlap with some of the larger mining companies such as Cameco, but they're also different as well, given the earlier stage and perhaps less of an impact. And like Rochelle, I too have to have forward-looking statements and disclaimers, so I'll include this in here as well. fact, I've got a page and a half, so there you go. I wanted to include this as well. As I said, ARIS is a publicly listed company really as of only last Tuesday. So we've been private for the last 16 months. We're 100% focused in Kazakhstan and focused on copper gold opportunities in the northeastern part of the country in Pavlodar. I wanted to particularly point out my business partner on this, Tim Berry, our CEO, who is right in the midst right now of relocating his family to Kazakhstan. So his wife and daughters and himself by the end of next month will be fully based in Kazakhstan. I'm staying here in Vancouver, but it really demonstrates, I think, our commitment to the country, to exploration in the country, and we've been very pleasantly surprised over the last 16 months with Kazakhstan, and are definitely one of the big cheerleaders in this part of the world here in Canada for investment in Kazakhstan. As I mentioned, we're primarily focused in the northeastern part of the country. You can see Muskoka, which is our primary asset. It's a copper gold asset that had historically been worked between 2007 and 2013, really through to 2017. And we're in the midst of what we believe is a really underexplored porphyry belt, focusing on copper gold. And really, basing everything out of a town called Ekibastuz, or a city called Ekibastuz, about 3 hours east of Nur-Sultan. Over the last 16 months, as I mentioned, ARIS has established itself in the country, set up a small office in Ekibastuz, as well as a small administration office in Almaty. Established a team of technical experts, largely all Kazakh geologists in the country, and then really started to get work on the ground. And of course, this is really, on the back of the COVID pandemic. One of the things that, we've had quite good feedback on, speaking with a number of the other larger mining companies that are quite interested, I think, on what's going on in Kazakhstan and the geologic potential that exists here, but perhaps don't already set up, is our nimbleness to kind of get in and get going. So reviewing the historical data, permitting projects, acquiring a substantial suite of licenses, in fact, more than 2,500 square kilometers, and doing a lot of technical work, not only airborne geophysics, but getting drills going, and really focusing on our ultimate objective, which is to make discoveries and to find a deposit or deposits that can really contribute to the much needed world need for copper, which continues to expand as we move forward. This is just a closer look in terms of where we're set up, and you can see 7 licenses, all within about a 200-kilometer radius of Ekibastuz, our base, and around the Muskoka deposit. And this is quite a significant commitment for a company such as ourselves. As I said, there's more than 2,500 square kilometers of licenses that we've acquired, and our geologic team is out on those right now as we speak, here over the last 6-8 weeks since the snow is gone. Primarily, most of the drilling activities is taking place in Muskoka, and last year we invested more than $3 million in exploration in the country. Our agreement on Muskoka actually would see us investing another $3 this year, and then $5 million in the next two following years. So these are significant investments for companies such as ourselves that's just getting up and getting going. And we're very excited as well around these additional licenses that in some cases are earlier stage, but still will command a lot of our attention. I think one of the things for myself, having visited here late last summer, early fall, what was really the amount of mining that's already happening in Kazakhstan. And I think for many on this call, you'll be well aware of that. But for definitely North American investors and mining executives, I don't think it's necessarily something that's as well known. Just in our area alone, there's quite a plethora of copper, gold, and coal mines. In fact, a very large coal mine that's been operating since the 1950s, not too far from our project in the Northeast as well. So swinging over to copper, and I think Ben did a great job on talking about the importance of metals and minerals in today's world. Of course, this is not anything new. I think we're all connected right now through our computers and powered by electricity that's probably delivered to our plugs using copper wire. And so this is not something that's anything new, but I think over the last 2 to 3 years, the world, and there's been more talk obviously amongst governments and COP26, etc. But we're extremely bullish around copper. We do believe that the world does need more copper, as was mentioned earlier as well. Today, on average, from discovery through to establishing and building and bringing mines on can easily be a decade and a half, 15 years. And of course, there's all sorts of other challenges along the way, not the least of which that Mother Nature's not making any more of these deposits. And so the higher grade, easier ones in easier locations have already been mined. And so now we're 5,000 meters above sea level in the Andes and in more difficult jurisdictions to try and get access to and actually develop mines. And so this is where we really see an advantage in Kazakhstan, the infrastructure, the welcoming really that the government has established through the new mining code. And also really wanting to develop its mineral industry. And so this is something that we see as a key benefit for us. It's a reason we're 100% focused in Kazakhstan. And just looking at some of the statistics around copper, and these are just a few tidbits that pop up. I really love that picture on the right-hand side. That's actually a picture of a submarine cable that is used when they connect wind farms. Of course, power through wind turbines is something that has become more and more relevant and more common, particularly in places like Europe. I read recently that each wind farm typically has on average 26,000 meters of submarine cable. Each meter of that cable requires 50 kilograms of copper. So that's 1,300 tons of copper just to connect the wind turbines. That's not including the copper that's in the wind turbines. And in order to produce that in an average mine today, that would be about 250,000 tons of ore. So that's a large mine, a large copper mine in the world. That's one day of production, and that's just to connect the cable on one wind farm in one location. So I think, it's an indication that our world is going to need more copper. BHP, the largest miner in the world, they estimate that over the next 8 years, we are going to have to, as an industry, invest $250 billion in copper development projects in order to kind of keep pace with what they see as demand coming down the pipeline. Those are real dollars, those are real investments, and the challenge ahead of us is very much time. Because these sorts of deposits, these sorts of opportunities take time to locate, to find, to finance, to bring along, and then ultimately to permit and to build. And so it's going to be an interesting next decade, but we think that ARIS is well positioned to try and help to meet that need with the support of the Republic of Kazakhstan. So with regards to our ESG and corporate social responsibility, in previous lives, having been involved with larger companies where we built and operated mines or working through developing mines, very familiar with the GRI reporting and as Rochelle mentioned, I think for many of us, it's been in more recent years where there's been a lot more focus on it, but it really has been good business to integrate that part of your overall sort of business strategy. I think the first sustainability report I was involved with was in 2008, so it's 14 years ago. And in fact, that was somewhat of a rarity. There wasn't a lot of sustainability reports that were being produced by then by many of our peers or even larger companies. In ARIS's case, obviously we're explorers, so we're, as I said, a little bit more on the pointy end. Our impacts are much less when we think about, we don't have large infrastructure that needs to be set up in order to mine and produce the metals. But I would also say that from past experiences, is actually at this stage of the mineral development cycle, it's probably just as equally as important, because it's at this stage where a lot of the earlier engagement with local stakeholders, local governments, and also the local environment take place. And if companies such as ARIS are successful on identifying deposits that do one day turn into mines, then ultimately these are the foundational pieces that allow for these mines to be built and built the right way. And so in ARIS's case, obviously we, with each of our licenses, and we have 7 of them, we have to undertake an environmental impact report More than 90% of our workforce is local, and this is a key focus for us. We've found that we have absolutely excellent technical and administrative team in Kazakhstan. It's one of our strengths. We'll continue to build on that. And then ultimately, as mandated underneath the the requirements with our licenses, is there is a portion of our expenditures that end up with the local communities through the local Akamat community fund. And that's an important aspect as well as we continue to move and grow our footprint. And lastly, of course, we're in Kazakhstan, we're sourcing Kazakhstan related supplies. We've got teams there, they're sleeping there, working there, and of course, using local contractors as well. And that's an important part of the overall economy, that the whole sort of multiplier effect, which is one of the great things about the mining industry. So that's just kind of the quick summary on Aras and our focus in the country. We look forward to continuing to stay involved over the coming years here. And for more information, we'd be happy to take any follow-up queries. The details are there on the screen.
Thank you so much, Darren. We will be following the company's progress closely. I'd like to invite our last speaker on the ESG panel, Manas Kiskakov, to present. I believe he is on. Yes, he is.
Здравствуйте. Спасибо, Марта.
Thank you.
Я приветствую всех
Good
участников.
morning. Thanks, Martha. I would like to welcome all the participants of the meeting and would like to thank the organizers for the invitation. Let me briefly summarize the way we ensure the safety and environment protection at our companies. The next slide, please. Kazatomprom pays special attention to preservation of lives and health of our people in line with the current policy of Kazatomprom in production safety, in health and labor safety, production and nuclear safety and environment protection. In our operations, the company keeps this as a highest priority. And this is reflected in the strategy of the company development and in our HSE policy. In addition, safety is one of the values of our company, which means that each of our staff puts this safety issue as the highest priority and the attitude of the leadership to this matter. Since 2018, Kazatomprom has become one of the first ones of participants of net zero traumas by being committed to 7 golden rules: leadership, threats, defining targets, continuous improvement of health and safety, ensuring capacity building investments in HR. And these golden rules are translated through the whole levels of the organizational chart. The next slide, please. Based on the 7 golden rules, we have developed and approved the Code of Labor Safety and Health, corporate strategy, and these rules and other best practices of OECD have become the basis of the operation management of Kazatomprom. Last year, we developed and introduced in all our daughter companies the single standard of HSE that defines the key requirements to leadership and planning and resource provision to the operations, dealing with contractors, risk management, and monitoring and evaluation of the health HSC system. The adoption of this document demonstrates the strive of Kazatomprom to operate without traumas and accidents, making sure that the staff is working safely. But no documents may make the life of people safe if they don't treat their lives seriously. We have to change the culture. And I think that now all the staff really recognize that the health is the most important thing than any performance indicators. And one of the key tasks is to improve the culture of safety to the level of the best international practices. To address this, we developed a number of mechanisms. Some of them include awareness raising, compliance with safety and health, openness and transparency, and in environment and health and safety. To manage HSC, the company has introduced the processes and procedures that provide positive results, that help identifying dangerous working places, identification of near misses using our information system, which is ECAP, which helps us quickly and timely responding to various changes. We also apply the system stop cards, where the staff will not be allowed to work if he refuses to work in the dangerous places. We also introduced the process of behavioral audits of safety. That is, we deal with the people's behavior, try to explain their dangerous behavior and how to avoid it and reduce the trauma risks. And we also support the measures that the person adopts to comply and pay the bonuses to those people. We identify the weaknesses of health and safety systems and make improvements and focus the attention of the workers on the importance of HSC. We are doing a lot in ensuring the road safety as well. Starting from last year, more than 1,000 drivers were trained using the safety driving. Starting from 2020, we implement Malzhanaman program whereby together with local farmers, we distributed the retroreflective collars for the cattle that reduces the number of road accidents and reduces the risks of accidents involving cattle. We have distributed to the farmers more than 11,000 retroreflective collars, and this work is supported through the communication with local farmers. All our vehicles are equipped with a GPS monitoring and video recording that helps tracing the routes and recording the violations of road safety rules. We also introduced the practice of filling in the checklist to identify the hazards. We are using QR codes for that, which doesn't require any financial costs. After the implementation of these rules, the number of mutual audits of the drivers and the passengers now influence the culture of driving and effectively take measures to improve. The next slide, please. As you may be aware, in 2018, Kazatomprom became public, and many previous speakers have already mentioned that we have our shares tradable at AIX and became public. Therefore, we undertook a number of commitments in social, environmental, and other areas and are now implementing them. This program is aimed for 5 years and will be continued. The task of the project is to bring our existing systems of ESG measures in line with the best international practices and standards of international financial corporations and OECD legislation. The key stages of ESAP involve the training of the staff with the best international practice, development of the policies and practices in line with best international practices, minimization of the negative impact on environment, identification and monitoring and protection of biodiversity in the regions of operations, improvement of correlation with in engagement with the stakeholders, local communities, and waste management, assessment of the food carbon footprint, planning and completion of the life cycle of enterprises after completion of production. So all these are the measures that we take in environment. The next slide, please. The next. I would like to comment that Kazatomprom is very actively collaborating with the AIEA and with on nuclear safety as well. Representatives of Kazatomprom, together with other lead participants, became members of AIEA to develop the health and safety measures on nuclear safety of the staff, which was published at AIEA in 2018, and we made presentations on the 24th corporate meeting on health and safety. And we are going to continue cooperating and sharing experience in HSC between our companies. I personally contact my colleague counterparts, Mr. John Takla from Cameco. We are continuously exchanging and sharing our views and experience. We communicate a lot. To complete my presentation, I would like to comment that this is just a small snapshot of the HSC measures in Kazatomprom. We keep improving our measures with zero traumas and minimization of environmental impact. And in Kazatomprom, the managers of all levels realize that their participation in the performance will not be safe if they don't take humans as the key value, and the leaders should take the best initiative. And I think that this is the best understanding of a state-of-the-art company globally that has a good understanding of environment and safety of people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Manas. Fantastic. Well, I'm delighted to start with some question and answers. We do have a little bit of time, and we've had quite a bit of interest from our attendees today in this particular session. And so perhaps what I will do is try and fuse a couple of questions into one, and I will offer the opportunity to all of our panelists to provide your thoughts on the subject if you have any input to share. So one question is if the team wouldn't mind elaborating on what a successful implementation of an ESG systems in mining companies in Kazakhstan looks like. And at the same time, if anyone could comment on the potential differences in ESG methodologies as compared from those applied in Kazakhstan, for instance, to the EU or North America, and whether those differences impact what a successful implementation of an ESG program looks like. Anyone from our panel?
I'll try to provide a very short answer to that without too much detailed elaboration. I think the major maybe difference is that, well, for instance, with the EU is that there is legal enforcement for the implementation, whereas in Kazakhstan we are at the early stages from that regards, and the companies are they are motivated to implement ESG based on their first beliefs and values, and the second based on the motivations coming from the financial markets. And obviously the declarations of the leadership of the country, but we don't have as detailed regulations as in the EU as yet.
Thank you, Akota. Any other commentary?
The only thing I would add is that I think for mining companies, and again, we're an explorer, so a little bit different in terms of the challenges and how kind of we how we operate and what we need to be kind of focused on. But from past experience, having worked with mining companies that are operating around the world, a lot of the approaches are the same, right? I mean, you don't change it necessarily from one country to the next. I mean, you really try to focus on what is best practice, looking at what the risks are within the business, and then establish a process and procedures within the corporation that are very similar across all nations. I think Akboda's point is correct. I mean, there's going to be subtleties within different countries where there's different things that you maybe need to do or pay special attention to. But it's, largely at a corporate level, you're treating it the same, right? I mean, it's,
right.
Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you so much. A follow-up question. How would you consider building an ESG type framework that is kind of future-proofed for tomorrow's economic realities, for changes in potential regulatory regimes, et cetera? How would you, open to the panel, how would you try to future-proof the implementation of your ESG program as it is today?
I can maybe start, and I'll let anybody
Fantastic.
join in. And I think, some of this we've talked a little bit about, but I think, to really start off, a company needs to look at the ESG issues that have the potential to materially impact their business and ability to add long-term value. I think that's really the starting point, is to understand what are those factors that are important to your company. And then looking for feedback from your stakeholder groups on what issues are important to them. And they'll evolve over time. Then you need to sort of set appropriate and realistic and measurable targets and consistently measure and report against your performance towards those targets. And then, of course, keep yourself informed on the changes in ESG regulations and reporting, and make sure that you're capturing the information and integrating those principles into your strategy. And so that's sort of how I think you sort of future-proof it.
Thank you, Rochelle. Any other commentary?
Разрешите добавить.
Okay, with your permission. I think it was mentioned that we have to set targets and then develop the program in order to attain these targets. So these targets can be short-term or long-term, from 1 year to 5 years. And if you develop a program for 5 years in accordance with the challenges, trends, the legal environment, at least this is what we do. If we make a multi-year program, we make adjustments depending on the situations or trends. As for example, something that happened during the pandemic, when we had to introduce quick changes. Modern company have to be flexible like this, but priorities and targets, of course, it's the safety, it's the environment, communications. This is the most important targets, and this is how we see the most important. Thank you.
Thank you, Manas. I wonder if the panel might comment on how technology is impacting your ESG systems, whether it's through implementation, intercompany implementation, or whether it's through potential uses of technology, strategic technologies moving forward to continue to create an ESG program that is relevant. For example, are any of you using specific programs, technological programs, to integrate the ESG strategy as between satellite offices, as between sites?
We're not really. I mean, ours, again, it's fairly more simplified. You kind of got one area of focus. But yeah, I guess for some of the larger mining companies across multiple sites, I'm sure could be integration. Now, Rachel, if you have any comments on that.
I don't have any specific. I'm not exactly sure what sort of technologies we're thinking about here, but I mean, certainly technology plays a role in ESG, and certainly in terms of making changes at mine sites that improve your ESG performance. That certainly is a focus. And things like looking at energy systems and energy use so that you can optimize those uses. That certainly is. And we're looking at automation where you increase safety performance and things like that. So from that perspective, absolutely technology is playing a role in ESG.
The other thing, I guess, maybe as well, Martha, is the importance around data capture, right? I mean, I think this is something that, historically, mining companies, I mean, we're running businesses, right? And so there's things that we're doing every day that we don't necessarily think about. We're trying to be more efficient. We're trying to burn less diesel to move trucks. We're trying to be more efficient with regards to loading trucks up and less wear and tear on tires and everything else, because it's good for business. But I've definitely seen, over the last 10 to 15 years now, where there is more of a focus on that reporting, on that sustainability report. As Rachel said, identifying, what's material to each of the business units or the companies themselves, and then addressing that with your stakeholders. But a lot of it is data capture, right? It's actually capturing the data so that you can report year on year and you can actually track your progress and measure. So that those would be probably important things. I can't speak to specific tools, but absolutely, I know it's happening.
And when you're talking about tracking and measuring your performance against your established success criteria or objectives, what are typical strategies that you would use to measure that performance?
Well, I think a lot of the time it can be both quantitative and qualitative, and so obviously, and there's been lots of talk about this over the last 2 to 3 years. I've read a few books around it when we talk about trying to be more environmentally conscious. Bill Gates talks about it as well as trying to remove the green premium, right? And so when we think about the impacts, I think we all understand that with mining, we have impacts. Absolutely, there is. But it's our job really to think about how do we minimize those, how do we maximize the benefits, and I think in terms of tracking, it does have to do with data. Can we be more efficient? Can we move to electric trucks? Can we move to automation? These are the things that new technology will drive, and ultimately you're going to be benchmarking yourself, against how you did last year and the year before. What are the progress points that you're making?
And as an international trade lawyer, I would be remiss if I didn't ask... Oh, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Last year we adopted a new environmental code in Kazakhstan. The requirements for environmental protection became more stringent, and at present, as far as Kazakhstan, the government is developing a list of the best accessible technologies for various industries, available technologies in Kazakhstan, and accessible as at today, and we can introduce them into our technological processes. And what I would like to note here, first, there is a technological audit in these in various businesses, and I'm glad to say that we are not the major polluters. We're not in the list of major polluters because we do use such technologies already. But you can't rest on your laurels. We study various R&D results of R&D research, various studies. This is something that we do constantly in order to have a continuous improvement for production system and to improve the ecology. Thank you.
Thank you, Manas. Perhaps I'll ask one final question. And as an international trade lawyer, having done a pretty significant amount of work in this area over the last few months, I wondered if the panel could comment on how legal changes, like, for example, economic sanctions, impact your ability to roll out additional ESG performance matrix or your strategy around ESG.
I guess from Cameco's perspective, obviously sanctions and restrictions on things and cancellations on things like insurance and whatnot have certainly had an impact on us. And it's also played into our decision in terms of some of the shipments that we take of material coming out of Kazakhstan and the route that those materials take for us. And so that certainly has impacted our business. Technically we still can ship through Russia, but we've chosen for various reasons not to. And that I would say is probably for us where the biggest impact has come for our business.
All right, seeing no further commentary, I will leave it at that. Thank you to all of the speakers on the ESG program. Very much appreciate your input. And again, I invite our attendees to review the impressive biographies of each of our panelists in the agenda. And I will send the baton back to Catherine. Thank you, Catherine, and thank you to the panelists.
Thank you, Martha, and thank you all of the panelists. Great information. Let's move now to the last but not the least session of our webinar, and I'm passing the floor to the moderator of this portion, Christopher Shegel, director of one of our member companies, Schneider Group. Christopher.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Catherine, and thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody of you. So now in the final session, we will speak a little bit about the innovation technologies in the mining industry, what are the latest equipment trends and what will be happening in the future. We heard a lot of already today, but now we are focusing in the next 45 minutes to some core areas. I'm proud to have 4 very experienced speakers in this panel. I'll just briefly introduce Anwar Borambai from Cardiology. We will have Serik Dusanbai from Kazatomprom, Ryan McEachin from MSTA, and Bill Thuma from AGD Systems. I encourage you to ask questions. You can write them in the chat, in the question and answer session. We will collect them and will answer or try to answer them at least after our presentations. So not to lose time, I would like to introduce to you Anwar Borambai from, he's the CEO of Cardiology, while Cardiology was established in 2011 and runs geological studies of subsurface seeking to obtain data on the geological structure of the subsurface. The company provides full support to investors, starting from the process of selecting sections for the geological exploration, obtaining the right of subsurface use. So actually, the company is heavily involved in transfer of modern technologies, and it's also part of the company's mission, if I understood it correctly, which is that to become the world's class national exploration company by 2025. So I would like to share the floor with Anwar Borambayev. The floor is yours, and will be very interesting to hear from you about your experience.
Добрый день, коллеги. К сожалению, сейчас
Hello, colleagues. I have replaced Mr. Kazbek Ergibayev. I'm Albek Maranbayev. I've been in the executive of this company, and I think I would be glad to answer any questions that others may have. As far as what concerns the government, the questions, the first. What is the state is orients itself, as my colleagues have already said, from various state organizations who has so far taken part, and they've talked a lot about the fact that what is being done by state agencies to improve the investment climate in our country.
На сегодняшний день. Второй вопрос — это что?
So what needs to be done for this, and what impedes this progress? The colleagues in previous sessions also tried to tell us and show what is being done by the state agencies and representatives of other state organizations to improve the investment climate. And the third question, what does the government offer to the society in this area? Again, there were presentations by the representatives of state agencies and the representatives of the business who are working in Kazakhstan in our area. In my presentation, I would like to talk about our company and what we are doing over a certain period of time as we grew. As you can see, the company was created in 2011. We celebrated 20 years of our activity. Not everything went as smoothly as we wanted. The company was trying to do his best to represent the state interests, and at the end we stayed in the sector of hard rock resources, minerals. Our strategy, it's the state geological surveying. It's a stage at which, of course, very important stage at which we collect materials, data that would allow us subsequently to allow the companies to engage into production. And I would like to tell you more about what we're doing in order to achieve these results. The second strategic direction is a scientific and analytical support of the geological industry. These are components of the analysis and regional research, which then results in localized information and strategy for particular local areas or local deposits. And so I will be talking for the implementation of these goals. Our company performs the work of scientific and analytical support of the geological branch. The third strategic direction of our activities is attracting investments in the exploration industry. Using the two previous the first two allowed us since probably by 16, a whole number of portfolio investment projects. On this slide, we showing you 44 soil use areas. We created 28 joint ventures, 27 of which are in the area of subsoil, and one with less. It's a technical lab. We received Kazakhstani accreditation, and now we are making our best efforts in order to receive international accreditation. We think that perhaps by the end of this year, we should be successful. The partners on the right side, where we have ongoing negotiations. We engaged in subsequent negotiations. We are in the at the point of signing certain documents with them. Here, with the areas that we have, areas in which we have already implemented our work, which allows us to, as I said, this is a very important stage, which allows us subsequently to allow for production, make it possible for strategic investor and also for junior companies. Various equipment for different functional use, which allows us productively and efficiently achieve the goals we have in our production. Here we talk that indeed the company had an information system, national data bank, quite a complicated project. We had certain problems internally with this. We have resolved that, and we are still working on some of them, and now we're going to delve in more detail into developing such a data bank, and then eventually we even though the content, we're not quite satisfied with the content, but we believe that we will be able to achieve the volume of geological information is such that we'll probably have to wait another couple of years before we can digitize all the information and build the geological model, which would allow potential investors get into the data, familiarize themselves with the data, both on the regional level and the national level, and identify particular local area which is most amenable to that model, and decide to get into production eventually, as we hope. Together with the LS, as I mentioned, we have set up a geochemical laboratory. We have 2 regional branches of this laboratory, and of course that would help those investors who would come to us to receive good quality of information for analysis and decision making. And there are certain projects that haven't are still waiting for a partner. And there are certain minerals, as you can see on the slide. So far, these are the projects that are owned by Kazgeology as a subsoil user. This would allow a potential investor to come to us and familiarize themselves with the geological data and arrive at their decision whether to move on or not. General information on the project in Kostanay region of the Republic of Kazakhstan, information on certain parameters for this particular project. We There's Kaskol. You have our contact information here. You can see in front of you. We'll be happy to respond to your questions. Get in touch with us if you wish, and we'll provide you with the information that you need. We'll tell you about the contracts that we have for subsoil use in our country and what can be done with it as part of it for subsequent contracting. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. It was, I think, really interesting. And I think one thing what you said about the investment climate, which is way better than it was years ago, this I know from my personal experience. I've been working 2 years in Kazakhstan. We have now a staff of more than 80 people in Kazakhstan out of a staff of 500 people at all. So we are supporting a lot of investors and international companies now coming to the country. And especially in the last 3 months, I would say, we see a strong interest of companies who had previously focused maybe also on Russia and other countries now coming closer to Kazakhstan to have more enforcement on their project, which they were already planning there. Questions we will ask and answer then in the Q&A session. So I would hand over the floor to the second speaker, Mr. Serek Dusanbayev, the head of the Science Coordination Department from Kazatomprom. Mr. Dusanbayev holds a PhD in chemical sciences, has more than 50 scientific publications, and is a co-author of 12 patents. Throughout his professional career, Serek has been involved in different positions in Kazatomprom, as well as in the Institute of High Technologies. Kazatomprom itself is a national operator of the Kazakhstan's government-owned uranium and rare metal assets, as well as a national producer of nuclear fuel for power plants. Kazakhstan is the world's largest producer of uranium. I think most of you know this. So thank you very much, and I would kindly ask you for your presentation.
Спасибо за представление.
Thank you very much for your presenting me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm representing Kazatomprom, and at present, maybe you have an old information, as a Deputy General Director of Ionak Kazatomprom. It's a scientific center. As you all know, our company, Kazatomprom, is a global leader in uranium extraction as well. It has more cutting-edge technology to extract uranium, we have the lowest cost of uranium production. Next slide. A huge role is played our Research and Design Institute, TOIVT, which supports all the aspects of activities of Kazatomprom, developing of SOWs, lab research, then pilot projects, all the design work and implementation, support and operation of all new technologies that are being used by Kazatomprom. Also patents that are being used by Kazatomprom, and also the training and advanced training of specialists at Kazatomprom. We wanted to show you 5 main technologies that Kazatomprom implemented over the past 2 or 3 years. And firstly of all, really helpful, it's an involvement into the production of small deposits. As you know, we have in situ extraction. This is the most leading method of uranium extraction. We have an ISI method is the most advanced, and for using that method, we have a 150-ton mobile unit, which allows us with minimum capital expenditure for remote deposits or remote areas with small deposits of uranium.
У нас было экстракционное получение закиси окиси-урана, но, как говорится, для того, чтобы более эффективно использовать производственную мощность.
For us to efficiently use the production capacity, we transferred most of the productions using peroxide sedimentation. We have designed the new method, and most of the equipment has been designed and developed by us as well. And these technologies are now implemented at Kazatomprom with peroxide sedimentation to get the ready-made product. The next slide. Here you can see that with the underground leaching, the depth of the wells could be up to 350, 500 meters, and quite often the wells may get clotted, and it was our innovation that using some engineering capacity of Kazatomprom, we designed a special vehicle for the cleaning of technological wells. And here you can see this vehicle, which is in fact patented. I'm not going to discuss all these technologies in detail. My key task is just to demonstrate the equipment and technologies that are being already implemented and used. We also, for the first time in the world, you know that every process in uranium production using leaching method is, which is a method of concentration. We used various methods such as absorbing sedimentation. And for the first time globally, we used the technology of nanofiltering. This technology of nanofiltering of disorbates and production solutions. The disorbates are with uranium concentration of 16 grams per millimeter, and all other operational solutions. We did some testing and trial testing in 2019, 2019, and in 2020, we started using this methodology of nanofiltering. In 2022-24, we are going to use this technology with various membranes of various countries for nanofiltering of various production solutions. And now we are working to make sure that the rare earth metals are also produced using the nanofiltering technologies. The next slide. We pay a lot of attention to digitalization, and we have developed and patented the simulator of 2.0 version using the modeling. We built the geological modeling for the coefficients of filtering and distribution of uranium underground. And this digital software helps measuring the efficiency, intensity, and optimal flow of solution when we leach uranium underground. And this software, based on the mathematical model, helps defining the concentration of uranium in solutions, consumption of solution, and so on. So this software is very actively used by Kazatomprom in its operations. We have our own R&D center where we employ the architecture and construction team, engineering team, the cost estimate team, the design team, and technological team. The institute has also a branch of the Kazakh Nuclear University. In our institute, the staff gets their professional development in the automatic system operation, geodesy, geology, geotechnology, geophysics, hydrogeology, quality ensuring, production safety, reinstatement works, construction, chemical technologies, electromechanicians, electricity. So the entire range of development courses are provided by the branch of Kazakh Nuclear University, that is a branch of Institute of High Technologies. We are proposing collaboration. You know that in Canada, you have Cameco, and we already work together via INCAI, and those who use underground leaching, we can help in the processes and develop the technologies for repair works and restoration works in the wells to optimize the processes of production solutions and performance improvement technologies, research support, scientific support, and also through personal development and professional training of your staff who can get any profession in any metallurgy subsector. The technologies that I mentioned before that we developed and introduced for the last 3 years, these are just a small bit of our researches. We designed and built almost 80% of the mines by Kazatomprom based on our designs and developments. Thanks for hearing me, and I'm very glad that I had this chance to make a presentation to you. Thanks a lot, Mr. Dusimbayev.
As well, it was also for me extremely interesting. We will move also now to our Canadian companies. And before the session, I had a talk with our General Director, Mr. Kirill Afanasyev from our office in Almaty, also asking so what he sees and if he sees the trends that for international companies with their specific technological equipment and services is a good and growing market. And he also confirms this. And so it will be interesting to see how our colleagues from the Canadian companies have a view on this. So first I would ask Mr. Ryan McEachin from MSDA, Managing Director, to join. Ryan has over 25 years of experience working in Canada and internationally in the mining industry for multinational firms in mining, investment banking, and global manufacturing and drilling services. He holds an MBA from the Wilfrid Laurier University and is a professional geologist in Ontario. For more than 40 years, MSDA Canada has been connecting its members to opportunities and assisting their business growth in some focus areas such as networking, education and information, and advocacy. I hope I summarized it correctly. So we'll be glad about your thoughts.
Well, thank you very much. Am I sharing my screen? Is that, I apologize if I wasn't aware of that. If I am, I will do that right now.
Yes.
Okay, let me
Let's try yours.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for being slow to this, but here we go.
It's
Tell me
fine,
if you,
session. Okay, now we can see your screen.
you can? Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you very much for the kind introduction there, Christopher. And thank you for inviting me to be on this panel. You know, my angle here from our perspective, when we look at innovation, it's really about making mining more responsible. And so I have, I'll go through a series of examples of what we mean by that. And there are thousands of companies that are providing innovative solutions from Canada. And I'm only going to give you a very small narrative here for examples. I just want to put this first screenshot because when I talk about innovation and making mining responsible is really, this is how I view it. You're either trying to reduce the water intensity, the energy intensity, or the environmental footprint, and that includes the carbon footprint. Those are kind of the main objectives, and we call that going towards zero waste mining. And I box that in because any operation, it's about improving the productivity as well as improving the safety of the operation and the communities around it. So that's what makes it sustainable. And so, you know, our previous panel was talking about CSR or ESG. This aligns well with that view. So what I'm going to do is quickly provide you some examples of what I mean by innovative solutions that are trying to attain this. So the first one I have here is a company called CEC Mining Systems of Vancouver. This is one of the solutions they provide, and it's a focus on ceramic filtration of tailings. Now, conventional tailing filtration or filtration technologies are not as efficient as this one. So from an energy standpoint, this is a very efficient. You save money and energy. Obviously, it reduces the use of new water, so you're reclaiming the existing water that you're using. And by virtue of doing that, you're reducing your footprint of the actual tailings that you're producing. It's called dry stack tailings. So this is a company that provides a solution here that actually hits all three of those objectives that I showed in the previous slide. The next example, of course, we see a lot of the decarbonization, and part of that is, of course, in the vehicles that we operate. McLean Engineering out of Collingwood, Ontario, has been at the forefront of battery electric vehicles, and they have over 100,000 hours of experience already with over 40 vehicles in operation around the world. And that is just growing in leaps and bounds as we talk. One of the interesting things about battery electric vehicles is the health benefits to the operator. If you have an operator on the machine, what they notice right away is that the vibration and the noise is significantly down, let alone the air quality, and it actually reduces operator fatigue. And operators that have been on this won't go back to the traditional diesel operation, which is a very telltale sign that you're doing something right. They're also, of course, moving to the next generation where you're bringing in AI and robotics. So that whole automation piece is coming through as well. The next trend or innovation is that we see a lot of underground and surface is removing the operator from the hazards. And so what Hardline is a company out of Sudbury, Ontario, that has, is a leader in remote mining. And I really see this as an existing and bridging technology to what we hear about as the autonomous mining. But autonomous mining, you talk to the experts, you'll notice there's a challenge. It requires a lot of data and it requires a lot of learning by the machine. And you can actually quickly get to the limits of what you think it knows before it can't really move. So that is something down the path. But this is actually something that can happen right away. You can do this on surface, as you see in the bottom corner there. That's in Chile, where the haul truck operators are in an office or a control room where you have everyone together operating. And what's interesting about that, it allows you to have, say, your guru that's very knowledgeable about the operation, being able to troubleshoot with the operators that may be new to the equipment. So that's just another benefit of this technology. Quickly, of course, if you are underground, I know there's a lot of open pit in Kazakhstan, but there is some underground technology. So if you're trying to remove people and automate your equipment underground, you have to track it and you have to track who's around it. And so this is what TopView does out of Sudbury, Ontario. It's a sensor-based technology. Not only does it track people and equipment, it tracks the ore. So you can go right from the face to the mill and track exactly where that ore or waste is heading. And so that just, again, allows you to that journey of going to removing people and making it more automated, the operation. The next one, of course, especially underground, if you're going to get automated and you're going to have sensors and all that aspect, you need an information highway. And this is what Northern Lights Technologies does out of Toronto, Ontario. And it's a ruggedized equipment and that provides, again, that fiber optic data line that you need, especially underground, to accommodate for all the data that's being developed. They're also famous for their headlamps. And what I mentioned about their headlamps is the fact that this is where embedded technology is going. So if you're going to track somebody underground, how do you do it? You can do it with the headlamp, and that's exactly what they're providing. An interesting side note, they actually use 3D printing technology for military scale plastics on their equipment as well. Going back again to automation, bringing in that autonomous kind of robotics. You're seeing here from a drone to of course, people are probably famous from the MIT Spot, that yellow dog-looking robot. What Maestro does is they provide also detection sensor technology for hazardous gases. So you can actually determine whether it's safe to go into that if you have people underground and they have to go into an area. You can get in there quicker by knowing exactly when. Now they're applying it to these, embedding it into these autonomous vehicles. And that's just kind of what we're seeing as a trend. Interesting note on Boston Dynamics there it is not by, it's by design that they make it look like an animal. This is a part of the trend of trying to create an emotional bond between technology and humans and provide that trust between the two relationships. So just an interesting side note there. A back kind of on understanding about water and your footprint. This company is AquaHive or AquaTest. This is a ruggedized, I'll call it sensor agnostic. So it's not so much the sensors of watching where the water is and what it's doing, but it's the platform and how the data is transferred. It's done by very important componentry of data information. Plus it's done through satellite technology. So line of sight is not required. This makes it safer. You don't have to have someone going out testing the water or using helicopters. It can actually be done remotely. And of course it's done and you can embed your limits that you need to know. So if there is some sort of out of parameter, a warning, it can do it in real time. And I just want to close out very quickly here, bringing back kind of the innovation and the ESG lens. This company, Cipher Environmental, provides dust suppression and road stabilization, making your roads safer and for the communities around them. And so, and it's a bold statement, as you see in the bottom right, they're the only company that has a zero environmental impact if you're using any of those dust controls. So it's a pretty bold statement for them. Cipher Green Roads is what they do is with their clients, if they're using the product on the operation, they will donate a certain amount of product to the communities so that now the communities are benefiting. And if you get a chance, please go see the video of how the Fekola mine, the community there in Mali, how they have benefited from this product, and it's changed their lives, their health, and their livelihoods. So there's just another example. And I think that's it for me.
Thank you very much, Ryan. It's impressive and would eager to learn more about this. I have already received also a question for you, but we come to this also at the end of our presentation. So we have in the session one speaker still left, which is Bill Thuma, principal from HED Systems. Bill is a graduate geophysical engineer with a natural resource exploration experience across Canada and the Southwest US. He's a highly experienced professional with a record of concluded contracts for procurement of exploration equipment, visited over 50 countries, including Central Asia, where we are now. He's also a member of the Archaeological Institute of America and the Canadian Exploration Geophysical Society. HED Systems provides services throughout Central Asia, Mongolia, Vietnam, and neighboring countries, offering a full range of geophysical and geoscience systems for natural resource exploration, groundwater and subsurface mapping, research and education. I hope also for you, I have summarized everything correctly. If not, let me know. It will be a pleasure to hear also your input to our panel. But we can't hear you. The microphone is still on mute. It's in the lower left corner or in the very lower left. It's no, we can't hear you. On the very low left should be a button with the microphone on it. We see that it's unfortunately switched off. No, we can't hear you. Where you have switched on the video to the left is a button with a microphone. Usually it should be there. Well, this was now the video, but next to it is the button with the microphone. Actually, we neither hear nor see you, but see that you, yes, I think now you have the microphone on. Now we need also the button for the video, which is the next one. We see it is the presentation, but still don't hear you. Bill, unfortunately, we see that you are sharing your presentation, or who is sharing, but Bill, we can't hear you. Nonetheless, maybe
the audio is connecting, Christopher. So
okay. So
give it a second.
Yes, otherwise I would have asked already a question to the colleagues, but we come to this then when Bill is here.
Bill, could you try your audio? Could you say something? You're not on mute, but we cannot hear you at all.
Now it seems that the sound is switching on. No. It's connecting. Otherwise, I really would start with a question which I got, and in the meanwhile we try with.
Am I on now?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
We can
Thank
see
you.
and hear
Sorry
you.
for that.
No problem at all.
Let's see how if we can get rid of that. Do I still have audio?
You have audio and we hear you quite well, very well even.
Okay, and you see the presentation?
Unfortunately not the presentation, at least I don't. Now we see the presentation.
Okay, finally.
Always fine.
Technology sometimes it tries to fight against you. Well, thank you and welcome. Today, I'm happy to share my experiences, but more importantly, AGT's experiences, which span more than 20 years of working with various government groups and private companies in the region. First, assuming that many tuning into this session may not be familiar with who we are, permit me to introduce you to AGT Systems, our history, and where our focus lies in the mining sector and in Eurasia before sharing with you what we feel is a successful formula for doing business there. AGT was founded in 1991 by geophysicist Victor Ovcharuk after decades of experience conducting natural resource surveys throughout the former Soviet Union. His idea was to facilitate trade between a wide range of Western geophysical suppliers and the exploration groups and institutes throughout Russia and the former republics. His business plan included proposing the most appropriate technologies for achieving the client's objectives, providing all the documentation in the Russian language, and assisting in negotiating contract, and then finally expediting export and import. And through his own experience in this field, he began also including comprehensive training and long-term technical support. It was not long before his commitment to the industry and his excellent history of client support made AGT the go-to source for any geoscientific equipment and software. Then 10 years ago, he set up an office in Almaty, staffed by experienced earth science professionals. And since much of the equipment and software came from Canada, he and I set up an office here in Toronto. As to the specific market, the next slide gives you a general overview. Of course, as I indicated, the primary one is exploration for minerals and oil and gas, but it also includes the mapping of geothermal and groundwater resources. On the scientific side, we provide equipment used in the earth sciences education and research, and to observatories to monitoring earthquakes and volcanic activity. So basically, anywhere geophysical tools are needed, we help our clients select the best and most appropriate technologies. The next slide gives you a sample of the clients that we have served in Uzbekistan. As you can see, this is a cross-section of those groups we typically serve. Images attached to the slide show one of the meetings, one of the many meetings there, and our exhibition booth at one of the MINEX events, which we have been part of for the last 10 years. In the next few slides, I can give today's audience a quick view of some of the geotechnologies AGT supplies and delivers. We start with airborne geophysical systems, where our direct field experience in managing and operating these complex systems spills off into all other areas of the geosciences. These fixed-wing systems shown here integrate high sensitivity magnetometers with either gamma spectrometers or very sensitive gravity meters. These systems efficiently collect data to map the subsurface and underlying geology, and are often the first tools used to look for potential mineral deposits, often on a large regional or even countrywide level. The photo on the left is one of the two systems we provided to fly the entire country of Turkey. And the one on the lower right is a survey I managed that was contracted to a major mining company searching for gold. The next example are helicopters. These are typically used in smaller areas or in areas where the terrain is too rough for more economical fixed wing systems, or where targets are smaller and would benefit from better resolution. Or in the case of the system on the left used in Kazakhstan, we were mapping Earth conductivity and the magnetic field. This type of system is widely used in the search for base metals, gold, diamonds, as well as groundwater and geothermal resources. The two images on the right carry specialized gradient magnetometers, one of which was delivered to Kazakhstan. One advantage of helicopter systems is that the equipment is shipped and installed in a local helicopter, saving money on mobilization costs. Another is that the targets found can often go directly to drilling without further ground surveys. As a sidebar to the helicopter systems, in 1986, I was involved with another company in providing a gamma spectrometer system to the Russian Ministry of Environment. Shortly after it arrived and was commissioned, it was diverted to map the extent of radiation around the failed Chernobyl reactors. I later found that the flight crew eventually all died of radiation poisoning, and the entire system sits in a secured field along with other vehicles contaminated by radioactive material. Now let me briefly show the newest entry in the airborne side, and that is the UAVs, or unmanned aerial vehicles, also known as drones. Next slide.
We also have to look a little bit on the time, Bill.
Sorry?
We have to look a little bit also on the time.
Okay, it's coming up. These have applications in smaller aerial surveys where the terrain limits the use of helicopters or fixed systems. As geophysical platforms, they carry a growing number of pieces of equipment. One of these applications of AUVs is for locating buried unexploded ordnance. The next slide shows a sample of some of the ground equipment that we have. And these are quite a variety, including gravity meters and magnetometers, plus the software that we provide within almost everything. So summarizing all of these areas of geophysics, AGT delivers the best equipment and software to the client, combined with extensive training and a comprehensive support. So what is this? Next slide. So what is this proven formula for our success, not only in Kazakhstan, but wherever we work? Well, the first thing is we offer what equipment and software the client needs, which is not always what the client thinks they need. This is where our field experience and access to worldwide technologies helps immeasurably and allows us to pick the best solution in cost and performance to meet the client's objectives. And in delivering these, we assist the client in all aspects of importing and exporting. And before also, we provide all the training for both the individuals and the teams involved. And then after, we fully support the client with repairs, parts, and additional training, all by professionals with advanced education, direct experience, and expertise in exploration where needed in both English and Russian. Next. Then finally, where does all this lead?
Yes. Bill, we really have to take a look on the time because we're actually already over the time.
1 minute.
Yes, maybe like one.
Oh, okay. So where does this lead? Well, for one thing, it leads to successful exploration projects. It also leads to a better understanding of the geology and the natural resource endowments of the areas. And it creates a lot of domestic employment for highly skilled people. But most of all, it leads to a more vibrant economy. Next.
Bill,
that's the end. I thank everybody. And I should point out that just this morning I found out we had successful large contracts in Tajikistan and in Uzbekistan. Thank you very much.
Oh, this is impressive to hear about the large contracts, and I believe there is hopefully a lot more to come. So I actually have a question to receive for all of you. a little bit about the success. So what do you think are the top 3 tech trends in the mining industry with a focus on Uzbekistan? It's a very broad question, I understand, but maybe like one trend of you where you think that it has high potential. Maybe Bill, start directly with you.
I'm sorry, I didn't fully catch that.
What is one top tech trend in the mining industry focusing on Uzbekistan? Where do you think is a high potential?
Well, I would say the airborne systems that we have provided other clients opens up so many more territories for the use of or for the development of natural resources. What is critically important too is that in doing this, the interpretation, which is a training aspect that we provide, is very important, and we can provide those services through our company.
Okay, perfect. Ryan, what do you think? And Gasparin goes to Sambayev. Maybe you also think about your trend, and Mr. Borambayev, certainly.
Yeah. In addition to that kind of Venn diagram that I put out there, I think for us it's the data capture, the amount of data we're being able to grab, its ability then to process that. But it's going to do two things that I think are really important. Is one, it's going to create the transparency, as we talked about in terms of ESG and all that. That's going to be helpful. But it's also the data for decision making and feeding into these new AI models and into the autonomous world. We need data to move to that kind of trend. So I think data and data capture is kind of a real big trend, and using that data.
And I could add that there's a huge amount of data that is now being collected that wasn't in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking now at other systems, not particularly in Central Asia where we are working, but in other areas, and we're collecting terabytes of data in a matter of seconds. Now these are with complex LiDAR systems, which have tremendous application for the mining industry on a smaller scale, but we're looking at countrywide.
Yes, we have to give to the other speakers also the chance to give their one trend before we wrap up. Gasparin Sambayev, what is your trend, or what do you think is a strong future for Kazakhstan?
Знаете, мне нравится то, что
what I like is that we, and this is something I stressed in my presentation, we have one of the most cutting-edge technologies which allows for low cost of metal production. And this technology in Kazakhstan has a tendency to be used not only for uranium recovery. There are also other companies, molybdenum, tungsten, nickel, use the leaching method, which allows not to, dig out open pits or underground mines. It's more environmentally friendly, and most importantly, it allows to receive the required metals with lower cost.
Thank you very much. So we have within Borambayev, you are still here with us. If I can ask you, what is your trend where you think is the best potential now for Kazakhstan?
I've been listening to the presentation very carefully. In order to reach the final decision whether to enter a particular area or not, you really have to get geophysical information, and these methods allow to determine the feasibility, at least for entering into that area, which would be interesting for further maybe exploration and finally production for drilling. So I completely support my colleagues who have indeed shown how effective these new technologies work. And we do need to keep up our dialogue, keep in close contact to see how our thoughts are sort of coincide in particular areas of our future work so that we can give an impetus for further development of such technologies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Borambayev. I think it's time to wrap up. I just want to say thanks for your participation, your insight. Also thanks to CECC for organizing the event today. We are very glad the Schneider Group, already being since 5 years, I believe, joint members, and see how good the connection between Kazakhstan and Canada is working. So thanks also from my side for joining today. Catherine.
Thank you, Christopher. This concludes our webinar today, and thank you all for participation. Thanks again to the sponsors and the speakers, and two active groups of CECC mining working group that organized the whole PDAC slew of events, and also the group that is comprising KCBC organizing committee, all took a very active part in developing today's program. We'll look forward to seeing you all in Kazakhstan in September and October for KCBC events, the trade missions to MMCA and KIOGI, and the plenary session. Please also note that other mining related events that we organize are the Canada-Uzbekistan mining webinar tomorrow morning and the trade mission to Mongolia in September. That's it. Look forward to working with you closer now post-pandemic. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.